You're listening to Cinema Rex. It is an Iranian film podcast. Episode 14, Parviz Sayyad's Samad and the Carpet of Hazrat Solomon. What is a Hazrat? Is it a king?
No. Hazrat is like His Holiness.
Okay, because I've seen versions of this that say, on IMDb it's Samad and the Carpet of Hazrat Solomon, but that is such a jumbled up way of saying Hazrat and King Solomon's carpet.
Hazrat,
There's that
because
version
he's
too.
also considered a prophet in Islam, so they refer to him as His Holiness.
Okay. So the proper title is Samad and the Carpet of Hazrat Solomon.
Yeah.
Okay. Durud bar shoma, Dostan Aziz. This is the Cinema Rex podcast, where we discuss all things film, television, movies, politics. Not really politics that often, but movies mostly. I am Kaveh Mohebi.
And I am Farhan Moradi.
We have a guest today.
Who's our guest?
Well, okay, that's a great question. This guest is he's an actor and he's an improviser residing in LA.
Okay.
Let me just introduce his name first. Actually, I don't like the way I'm doing this. His name is Payam Banifaz. Payam Banifaz is an actor and improviser residing in LA. He's also an alumni and performer of over 13 years at the famed Upright Citizens Brigade. Some of his TV credits include a recurring role on NBC's Grand Crew and 3 seasons recurring on the award-winning show Shameless. Some of his guest starring roles have been on shows like Marvel's Wonder Man, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Veep, Superstore, not Superstar, Silicon Valley, Perry Mason, One Day at a Time, Bosch, Lethal Weapon, and more. His film work includes a role on the Oscar-winning hit Everything Everywhere All at Once, which we had discussed a few episodes ago, as well as Gus Van Sant's Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, and the Coen Brothers' Hail Caesar. But I came to know about him first through Instagram because my algorithm decided like, oh, you like Iranians and you like comedy. So the algorithm was like, check out this guy who does insanely funny stuff. And I remember my good friend Rez and I, we always share each other's like, hey, have you heard this guy? Have you heard that guy? And we started exchanging Payam's comedy sketches essentially. And we became big fans way before I got to meet him. And I've worked with him once on a short, which was an adaptation of a Sherlock Holmes murder mystery. And the last time we hung out in the restaurant, we met up with Peter Farley. So welcome to the show, Payam. How are you doing today?
I'm good, brothers. Thank you so much. Thank you for your lovely introduction. Pleasure to be here, boys.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Have you talked to Peter Farley since we've met? Like, did you get booked on the next... like the sequel to There's Something About Mary or something?
Well, we moved in together, so things have been going great with me and Petey Farr.
Good. Yeah, Petey Farr.
It's so funny because we were just talking about that we're at this sort of like this restaurant where like it's kind of like an older folks in that area of like Encino in Los Angeles County. And then we just ran into him randomly there. And we said, hey.
Yeah, you recognized him. You recognized him immediately, and I was not.
Well, no. To be honest, I was looking at him all night going, who the f*** is this guy? I know who this guy is, but I can't put the name to the face. And then it was really at the end when I realized it. So to be honest, I kind of just didn't remember who he was, but I knew he was somebody that I knew who he was, if that makes sense.
And he must have been really impressed to be in the presence of someone who's been involved in an Oscar-winning movie. Because between the two of you, that year specifically, only one of you guys have been involved in an Oscar-winning movie.
This is true.
He came up to me and said, hey,
how do you
saw
do it?
you in that movie. No, I'm kidding. But he won an Oscar, too, for The Green Book, which... Did he win an Oscar for The Green Book?
It might have won some stuff.
It did.
I remember it feeling like the year that people were tired of movies like Green Book winning.
That movie was trash, though, yeah. That movie was such sort of like designed to be some kind of Oscar, and it felt so phony.
Yeah, I have a couple friends of mine who are critics with Double Toasted. It's an online movie review platform, and you can track if you go back and you watch their reviews of similar movies over the last like 10, 15 years, they get progressively more and more critical of those movies because eventually they're like, look, there's more to black people than these suffering movies where you get to pat yourselves on the back and give us Oscars. Like,
Right. I mean, it was but it was kind of the thing of like the white hero situation where it was like it took this white guy to come and save this black guy, so I think that's another thing. And then of course the director is a white guy, so then you're just kind of, it just feels out of touch. It just feels out of touch. It feels inauthentic.
Is that why you threw your drink at him when you saw him walk by in the restaurant?
No, I threw my drink at him because of the sequel to Dumb and Dumber.
Okay, well, let me just, before we dive into the film that we watched, I want to know, I'm really interested in how you got your start. Like, when did you first get the comedy bug? Are you born in the U.S. or born in Iran?
No, I was born in Iran. I came here when I was like 8. Like, it's like almost 8. And then the thing is, bro, I never really consider myself a comedian. You know, I just like the comedy is just part of kind of what I do. But I started as like quote unquote a dramatic actor. I used to think that that's kind of the only way you could be considered a real actor. So I trained dramatically, and I trained, stage training, all that, and then I started doing improv at UCB, and then I fell in love with comedy. And since then, I've been doing both really, consistently. I love them both. And to me, they're both an extension of each other. There's the differences between one's approach to comedy and drama, in my opinion, are very subtle. I think people look at
of course.
People look at it as if there are these big differences, but it's really not. That's why I think people, oftentimes when they look at comedy, a lot of times actors, wow, comedy's hard. But to me, comedy it's the same as drama.
I think it works better going one way than the other. Like if you can do comedy, you're likely also very good at being like, if you can do comedy well, you can probably also do drama very well. But if you do drama very well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can do comedy very well. And I've seen it like firsthand.
Absolutely.
And I've seen your work, I've seen your drama, I've seen your comedy, and you can do both impeccably well. But there's tons of people I know. Oh, I mean, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
Thank you.
There's a lot of people who do drama, and you see them in a comedic role, and you're like, this is not for you.
It's hard, because the comedy, so much of it, because of the writing, requires a certain timing, and drama doesn't require that timing. Drama, you can take as much as your time, but in comedy, timing is so important. If there is not enough air between the joke and a punchline, and the setup, it doesn't work. If there's too much space, it doesn't work. As opposed to drama, where you can say a line, be quiet for 25 seconds, and then say the other line. But in comedy, it doesn't work the same way.
The other thing with comedy too, especially in performance, and I'm coming at this from a directing background, is that there's a fine line on when you need to give something more or less in terms of intensity.
Yes.
And in terms of subtlety, where with drama, when you do it, it feels like even if it's way off, the audience can read that like, oh, what's going on with this character? Like, why are they so intense here? Why are they so subtle here or whatever? But in comedy, if you go too far one way or the other, it just feels awkward. And you're like, oh, that was not funny.
But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. Timing is so important for comedy.
When did you make the leap from, I guess, were you doing dramatic acting before you sort of made the leaps and bounds in social media? And like your Instagram sketches are sort of the thing I had first caught on to you. That was my breakthrough into understanding your world. And I feel like you do so well on that. Was that a logical next step for you, or did you kind of fall into it accidentally?
No, I fell into it only because I had no interest in, I had been doing comedy. I started doing comedy and training in comedy and performing at the theater and doing live improv shows, a couple on at least a few a week since 2010. But it was in 2020 during the pandemic I started making the videos online because I was just home doom scrolling about COVID-19. So like I just started making the videos for fun and just that's it. I had zero intention for anything else. I didn't think like at the time I just really wasn't thinking, oh, I want to make these videos and get a following online or like have videos go viral or whatever. It just wasn't really part of the thought process. The process was like, hey, I want to make video. I was making some videos and then I decided to make a couple of videos like about Iranian cultures just so my like non-Iranian homies would sort of see it and laugh and like I complained for a long time that there was no content about Middle Easterns.
Yeah.
In a non sort of terrorist or non like immigrant porn, I call it. Yeah. Sad stuff like that. So like I just made it just for fun.
it came at such a perfect time because a lot of us were home, right? And all of us were doom scrolling. So in the same sense that you were like, oh, I was doom scrolling, I wanted to create, a lot of us were doom scrolling and we wanted to consume something better. And myself, for example, I went to stay with my parents for a few months during the pandemic. Especially, I lived in Toronto. I was the only one in my family who was there. I was very alone. So I went and I stayed with my family. And then all of a sudden, now I'm back in my parents' basement. And it's me in my 30s. My parents are upstairs. So you get a lot of similar, not exactly the same, but similar dynamics to what you have in your videos. And all of a sudden, my siblings were sending it to me. And they're like, hey, tell me this doesn't feel familiar to you. And then my cousins were sharing it with themselves because, like, same thing. A lot of them were saying with their parents, or that's like the only person that they could see because they were in their social bubble. So a lot of these tendencies that a lot of us grew up with, right, with the child and the immigrant parent, and kind of being stuck between these two different worlds culturally, all of a sudden we're being brought back and reintroduced to everyone. And then your material came out at the perfect time because it was like, oh yeah, we're all having this rebirth and that relationship with our parents, and now we can see it on our screens. It was very cathartic and very funny and validating to see.
That's interesting, bro. I never thought about it in terms of like we all were like, sort of like, especially us Iranians, that if we were, any of us were lucky enough to be able to get with our family, we're all with our families. You know, like I'm also like I feel like all like my white friends like no man, I can't be with my family. You know, that's like Iranians. We were like, no, we don't give a. We got to be with our family.
Yeah,
we're scared of COVID, but not scared enough not to be with each other. It's not like we were partying together, but it was just family got to see family. You know, like
I feel like from watching your video, I get a good sense of your father, even though it might be a more satirical version.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think part of that is so universal. I think so many Iranians can relate to seeing. If it's not like for me, that doesn't remind me specifically of my father, but it reminds me of like uncles and older cousins and stuff too. Mm-hmm. Was that just you kind of pulling a little bit of like relatable stuff from your own life, but making it bigger for comedy purposes? Definitely. Or was it something that you realized that this will, how universal did you know this would be in terms of other Iranians getting it?
Didn't know anything, to be honest.
I just put it out there.
I just put it out there. You know, I the thing is that character has aspects of my dad that are greatly exaggerated. And it's really a mixture of my dad and a couple of other Iranian dads that I've known growing up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All of them, it's highly, highly exaggerated.
Yeah.
It's so relatable, though. So relatable.
I did another podcast a long time ago. Someone was like, hey, so, you know, how did you know, or like what put you in a position to know, like, so much about, like, the behavior of family? I was like, I'm in no position to know. I don't know anything more than anybody else does. All I knew was I was just imitating a sort of like a clump of a group of men that I've known in my life. That's it. Like I had no greater understanding than anybody else on like the behavioral aspect of like Iranian fathers or cultural wise or anything like that. Mm-hmm. What's really cool and it's nice is it's like if you do something nice, if you do something that people like and appreciate, they'll give you so much more credit than you even deserve. You know what I mean? Like it would be absolutely wrong for me to ever say like, I know what I was doing.
I want to also draw attention to another type of video that you were doing, especially early on in the pandemic. And this was why I thought to bring you in for this episode, was you had some videos that were also imitating these old Film Farsi videos, like these old Film Farsi movies, where everyone's got like funny voices and the setups are like insane. It's like this guy who's like a walnut salesman wants to fall in love with the daughter of this rich man, and he's like, oh, I'll never let my daughter marry the son of a walnut salesman or whatever. And these just like funny, ridiculous parodies of these old Iranian movies I thought was just a perfect parallel to the Samad movies, right?
Thank you, man. I love doing those, but nobody else liked them. I think like they're very specific.
They are.
A lot of people like, I kind of don't get this. Like they might laugh at like the silly voices, but it won't speak to them in terms of like what they've seen. But yeah, I fucking love shit like this. And once we really get into the movie today, I have a lot to say about the acting from back then.
Can you tell us, right, we're going to jump into it in a second, but I want to know like your history with Samad. Did you know about him growing up? Did you watch him back in Iran? Like, what was your, like, when did you first discover Samad? How old were you?
Oh, I don't know, bro. I was probably like, as once I had a conscious level of understanding as a human being, I think that's probably when I knew about Samad. Because like in Iran, he was huge. He's such a big part of the comedy culture of Iran.
Yeah.
In my family, there was so many different like little sayings from various movies that we would say to each other. Like there was some movie like خوش مگذره بخوریم like all this all these different things. I grew up watching his movies. I can't remember all the ones I've seen, but I know that the two I've seen multiple times that I really liked was the Samad Bruce Lee Mishad and Samad Artist Mishad.
We're gonna review those ones too. If you look out for them, they are Samad Becomes an Actor and Samad in the Way of the Dragon are the two English names for those two.
Yeah,
they're so good, and those ones I feel like are like peak Samad.
Absolutely, peak Samad.
Because at that point, they've established all the tropes, all the sayings of the different characters. Like a bunch of recurring characters aren't in this one yet.
No,
this is the first one.
And his like, what's his
first movie?
Yeah, and then everyone's younger, and that dude, like the dude that he hates, that he's always in competition with. I forgot his.
Yeah,
Ain't no law is much younger. Ain't no law. Ain't no law. Is such a
and it shows his origin in this one.
Yeah,
I didn't realize like because in the later ones he's always so self-righteous and he's always wearing a tie but like everyone else is wearing like villager clothing, and it never occurred to me why. But in this one, and we can dive into it more as we get into the film, but in this one it actually shows his origin story in a sense.
That's so funny. I love it.
All right, I'll do the plot summary so we can dive into it. Plot summary for Samad and King Solomon's Rug, or Hazrat Solomon's, whatever it is.
Hazrat,
what is it in first?
Hazrat is His Holiness. So if you were to translate it literally, it's Samad and His Holiness Solomon's carpet.
Say it in Farsi.
Samad va Ghaliche Hazrat Soleiman, I think.
An archaeologist known as the Professor has hired a series of gangsters to track down a rare and priceless carpet located in a small village. Unfortunately, it's found its way in the arms of Samad, the hapless, childlike, naive, but street-smart simpleton who is a constant menace to those around him. Samad is cleaning the rug that belongs to the love of his life, Leila, and is willing to protect the carpet at all costs. But when it draws the attention of the Professor and his band of gangsters, Samad is caught in the midst of a slapsticky cat-and-mouse game between the gangsters, the police, and the Kad Khuda, the father of his beloved Leila. After villagers have been robbed and left penniless from the gangsters, the police, along with the aid of Samad, hatch a sting operation in order to catch the gangsters, all while the gangsters plan a heist to steal the carpet and do away with Samad once and for all. It has no Rotten Tomato score as it does not have enough modern reviews. But Payam, I start with you. I'd like to ask you, what did you think of Samad and the Rug of King Solomon?
Of course, funny, because Samad's funny. I think on this one, it's one of the earlier ones, and so to me, it's a very slow burn. It's a slow start, very slow start. I think in general, it doesn't hold up to my favorite ones because of the pacing, and there's just not as much established like jokes and it's kind of like it's a little tiny bit and the convoluted. Maybe it's convoluted a little bit because like there are some aspects of it that like there is maybe I'm not picking up or whatever, but it felt a little bit slow and a little bit convoluted and not as funny as some of the other ones.
I agree with that, and only because my perspective into all this will be different from both of yours. I hadn't even heard of Samad until we started this podcast.
Wow.
I was born and raised
okay.
I was born and raised in I was born in Vancouver and raised in Toronto, and just like
That's no excuse. I was born and raised here, and
I watched American movies growing up.
I did not.
But the thing is, when Farhan first told me about it, we started watching the first half of the Samad and the Way of the Dragon, and I thought that was so funny. Like the first 30 minutes into it, I was laughing really hard. So when we put this one on, my expectations were a little bit higher, and I have to say I agree with you, Payam. I thought it was like quite a disappointment in relation to the one film I've already seen of his.
Yeah.
Like it's a good thing Farhan showed me that one first, because if this is technically the first time I've sat and watched a full movie, and I was like, it's pretty slow and it drags a lot of parts. Realistically, and I'll get to when we talk about it, there was one scene I actually laughed out loud. The rest of it, I was like, you could just see that they're still shaping the character, even though I know it was a TV series first. It was like to put him into a feature movie, they didn't know enough of what to do with him yet.
Yeah.
I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Farhan, what about you?
You know what's funny? I've only seen this one once before I rewatched it for the podcast. Specifically because once you get to like Samad becomes an actor, Samad in the Way of the Dragon, Samad goes to school. Like once you get to those ones, those are so good that those are the ones that you just keep rewatching. So I had only seen this one once before. So it definitely felt like a fresh watch for me in a lot of ways. And I appreciated it for how it was starting to build these characters. Like immediately, every single time someone says the name of Enola, which is Samad's rival in the village. So Samad is like our titular character. He's the village idiot. He's in love with the daughter of the town mayor.
You should also add, I feel like it's good to know for context, he's sort of like an Ernest from Ernest Scared Stupid, or like he's kind of got the Charlie Chaplin, Jerry Lewis-esque. Like,
Charlie Chaplin,
like
Forrest Gump.
A hick of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Like he's kind of a simpleton.
Yeah, he's kind of a simpleton. But he also has like, he's also a bit of like a little bit of, not like a menace, but he has
Dennis
like
the
a
Menace.
mischievous side of him for sure.
Yeah.
He's very mischievous. Payam, what were you going to say?
I was saying like he's almost a smart dumbass.
Yeah.
He's very uneducated and unaware of the world, but like there is this mischievous like
He's cunning.
yes, he is cunning. And he, like you said, and he's very street smart. And he's got like balls of steel.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But he's street smart for the things that he knows.
Yes,
The things that he knows are very limited, right?
Very
so
limited,
he's
yeah.
never seen a gun before, for example. And there's a scene in the movie where someone pulls out a gun and he's like, what is that? And then
He says, is that a lighter?
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's a
Yeah,
gun.
he's
It's
like-
not. And then also, he's just got a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a lot of heart. The dude, like, will protect Leila with his last breath.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and
He's so in love with Leila.
he's so in love with Leila. And he's so jealous. But if you notice, the jealousy and that aggressiveness never goes towards her. To her,
Yeah.
he's very gentle.
Yeah.
And soft spoken, and just kind of lets her lead. And then to everybody else, he's like, I'll fucking kill you if you.
Yeah. Like to the point where if anyone is like singing a song that has the word Leila in it,
He
he
loses
like
his
loses
yeah,
it.
yeah. And then someone like that, a dude like that, you were like, oh, he's probably an abusive guy at home too. But like, he's actually
He's so
protective
gentle.
gentle of the women around him, like his mom.
Yeah,
too,
his
right?
mom too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the part that his move was to constantly poke out the eyes of the people he's fighting
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
So throughout the movie, you got a progression of increasing gangsters who have to cover their eye because they've been in a tussle
wearing
with
eye
them.
patches,
His
yeah.
move is to just go ringer. And then at one point, and this was the scene I laughed really hard. This was my chuckle moment. Was when he's in the forest and he's like on guard to protect the rug and Leila, and he's walking like this, like he's got his fingers pointed out like it's a sword, like that's his main weapon in his move. Like he constantly goes back to the finger, like I'll poke you.
Dude, he's like, I don't know what he's doing. He's like sharpening his finger. Or what the
Yeah,
fuck?
he's sharpening
Yeah,
his
yeah.
finger. He's like preparing for the climax, and his mom's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. That stuff was really great.
And even that, like that is a trope as it goes on, is like that Samad points people in the eye.
Yeah.
And like Payam was saying about this thing of like, were running jokes in our family that referenced things in Samad. One of them was this thing where there's no dialogue spoken, so this is going to be kind of hard to explain for an audio only podcast. But basically, he'll mime poking someone, and then he'll mime saying, "Don't worry, like relax." And then he'll mime saying, "I'll do it later." So with like physical descriptions, he's like, "I'm going to poke your eye out, but don't worry, I'll do it later."
Yeah.
And so we used to do that.
So is the eye poke thing throughout all the movies? That's like his move?
Every movie, yeah, that's his thing.
Funny. That's really funny.
I feel like he did it a lot in this one, though.
Yeah, he did it a lot.
Yeah.
Every gangster like gets another injury.
I almost feel like in this one, like they hadn't found him yet. Like you said, they hadn't found him yet really in the world of cinema. What is in the other ones, and some of the ones that like that are my favorite, I noticed is just like it's less of his weird behavior and more of the funny ass shit that he says. Like it's almost like they leaned harder into the comedy and physicality rather than like sort of like a bit like little basic tropes that he has.
Yeah. And same with Enola. I don't know if they do this as much in the other movie. They must, but maybe they just say Enola less. But in this, literally every single time someone says the word Enola always responds with Bakarzada, like every single time, which is son of Bakr, because like he goes to the town. Our introduction to Enola, his rival, is he's just come back from the town, and all the townspeople have gathered around this truck, and they're all like super excited that this guy's returned from the city, and it's almost like a rolling out the red carpet moment. But he's like in the back of the truck, hidden amongst like a pile of manure or something, with a burlap tarp pulled over him. So he pulls it off, and he gets out, and he's wearing this like stupid giant tie, and he comes out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, now he's Enola Bakarzada," because he had to like take on a last name in the city. So now, and he's like so attached to his full name, and he wants to show off that like, no, I'm a city man now. I have a full name. Bro. That anytime anyone says Enola, he always, even if his own dad is just saying Enola, he responds with Bakarzada. Like it doesn't matter who it is. He always
so that's throughout the movies he does that. But then this is the kind of, this is why you're saying it's an origin story, because like you kind of see that here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
They explain why.
That's literally the origin story of my last name, where it's like apparently my dad's dad went to like a big city, and then they're like, "Bro, what's your last?" He was trying to get like a social security card or whatever that the equivalent of that was, and they're like, "Bro, you don't have a last name. You have to have a last name." So he like literally made one up on the spot. That's not even Iranian; it's an Arabic last name. And
so funny.
Banifaz. So.
It's like the Corleones. The Corleones were like that too.
Like,
Corleone.
my dad long time ago was like, "Bro, our name has no like history." You know what I'm saying? Like it's just some dude, just basically not some dude, because my great grandfather, I guess. But it's like, but yeah. Anyway, but this is about Samad, not Banifaz.
Yeah.
I was just gonna come back to the Enola thing, but like even with his dad, he's like. There's a scene where they're all fighting, and his dad throws a blanket over like the group. It's like a group of 3 people fighting over each other, and it almost looks like a scene out of a cartoon where it's this giant blanket and there's just shapes under it moving around as they're fighting each other. And then the dad's got a cane, and the whole time he's like, Enola, move your head. Enola, move your head. And he's like swinging and hitting at this pile of people, and every time he's like, Enola, move your head, he goes, Enola, his son goes, Bakarzada, and he goes, move your head, Enola, Bakarzada, move your head. And it's just, there's so many of these quick little like back and forth interjections in the dialogue throughout the film that I loved.
Same thing with Samad. Anytime someone's like Samad, he's like, oh, Samad, oh.
Yeah, Samad, oh, yeah.
This is one part where he's just like, Samad, maestro Samad nist. He's Samad Agha.
Yeah.
We're like, I thought your name is Samad. He's like, oh, my name is Samad Agha. It's like they're like these sort of villagers that have so much
pride.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, at the beginning when they're like, oh yeah, sign your name here. He's like, okay. He's like, oh, and then I need to put the dots. And then he's like, there's no dots in Samad. He's like, oh no, Samad Agha. And like everyone just keeps joking about this guy calling himself Agha.
Yeah.
So good.
Should we jump to behind the scenes and trivia?
Sure, yeah. I'll like interject with like some of my other.
Yeah. Parviz Sayyad was born on March 22nd, 1939 in Lahijan, Iran. Throughout the 1960s, Sayyad starred in many plays that were adapted for television, and he was in the first Iranian television program ever titled Amir Arsalan, an adaptation of the popular Persian epic, which aired on television in 1965. But of course, he is best known for his role as Samad on the television series Sarkar Ostavar. The character Samad was a naive, street-smart country boy, somewhat reminiscent of the American Ernest series, after Sayyad went on to star in the famous Samad film and television series. His character, Samad, or Samad Agha, as he demanded others call him, was a prominent comedic icon of Iran during the 60s and 70s. According to A Social History of Iranian Cinema, social division and class struggles surfaced as themes in comedies and melodramas in three key areas: village life versus city life, the poor versus the rich, and the factory owner versus the worker. Parviz Sayyad developed a comic persona named Samad, a country bumpkin who, in a series of popular comedies, debunked the upper classes, city slickers, and various authority figures, government officials, religious leaders, villager elders, and fathers, by a combination of rural wiliness and morality. The Iranian Revolution took place shortly after his seventh feature-length film, Samad film, was released. I don't even have which title that is.
I can give it to you. It's Samad Goes to the City.
Sayyad would spend the money he made on commercially successful films such as Samad to fund the creation of independent and intellectual films. His 1977 dramatic film Dead End entered the 10th Moscow International Film Festival. Other noteworthy roles included Astola Mirza on the television series My Uncle Napoleon.
Fuck yeah.
Daijan Napoleon.
Fuck yeah.
Sayyad migrated to the United States shortly after the Iranian Revolution, where he continued to act, write, direct, and produce. Sayyad transplanted the Samad character into exile, unleashing him against the Islamic Republic in television shows and theatrical plays, which toured throughout Europe and North America. So he then shifted that character and put him into exile and would do performances across the world touring, taking down the Islamic Republic.
No, those were
Also,
like
Kof Show. He had a show, or he had a special. It was I think several part special or something called Kof Show in Iran, and it's absolutely hilarious. Like truly
What's that about?
hilarious. It's literally about this guy, this producer who's trying to put together the show. Did you ever see y'all ever seen the movie or seen the play Noises Off?
No.
I have not.
Okay. Anyway, never mind. That's not going to mean anything. Listeners, if you've seen Noises Off, where basically it's just about like this, it's about the show that's happening and what's happening behind the stage and in front of the stage. This is kind of what Kof Show is like. It's showing this fucking shit show of a New Year Eid show, Nowruz show this guy's trying to put together. That's just literally going to shit. And
that's
it's
cool.
just absolutely hilarious. And I've always wanted to do an English version of that because it's just so fucking funny.
Yeah. That also sounds like a lot of Kiarostami films where it's like, here's the story behind the story in front of the story while we watch the story.
Yeah. Good point.
So one thing that I'd love to also add to your list of BTS here, Kaveh, is that Parviz Sayyad, then this goes back to what Payam was mentioning too about being able to do comedy and drama. Parviz Sayyad's dramatic work is also critically acclaimed in the pantheon of Iranian cinema. Like all these big Iranian filmmakers that we are constantly saying, oh, these guys are the greats. There's tons of interviews where all of them talk about how Parviz Sayyad is incredible at what he does. And you look like you want to say something very excitedly. Go ahead.
In 1973, along with 19 other prominent writers, directors, and producers, Sayyad joined the PFC, Progressive Filmmakers Cooperative, Kanun Sinemagarone Pishu, a dissenting group of independent filmmakers breaking away from the official film artist syndicates, with the aim to create a new wave of cinema. To create a cinema, as Dariush Mehjui put it, worthy of our culture and nationality, a cinema against the commercial cinema, a culture in which even an illiterate villager in the farthest village in daily conversation cites poems by Saadi, Hafez, and Ferdowsi. The collective went on to state that the only features of rich Iranian culture that commercial movies employed thus far was the Persian dialogue alone. Filmmaker Haj Dariush declared that progressive filmmakers would use every legal means possible, including private sector financing, to help from His Excellency Satan to circumvent the distribution monopoly of the commercial sector. So basically, this group was like, we are going to start making art house films. And Sayyad was a major part of this. They were like, we're going to make art house films. We're done with this commercial crap. We want it to be important cinema. Sayyad specifically said that the group ultimately aimed to satisfy both the needs of consumers and their own desires to make films that, while representing our culture, national characteristic, and artistic growth, could also earn the country some foreign exchange. And Dariush is obviously making the joke, is like, we'll take money from any means possible, even from Satan himself, to make sure that our culture is representing proper artistic achievements in cinema. One of the first films they produced under this banner was Dariush Mehjoui's The Cycle, of which Parviz Sayyad was a producer of, which is like also considered a very prominent film in Iranian history. And then he received a PhD from the City University of New York, acronyms being CUNY. Farn, you want to read what that acronym is? CUNI? No,
I'd rather not.
In 1983, he directed and starred in the film The Mission, Ferestade, which was entered into the 33rd Berlin International Film Festival and won the Grand Jury Prize. In the 1950s, institutionalizing dubbing and lip-sync actors' reads became popularized to raise the technical capacity of the film industry and popularizing the commercial cinema world and improving the film-going experience. They preferred dubbing and lip-syncing of the foreign films because they realized that putting the subtitles would ostracize the large masses of illiterate filmgoers in Iran. Therefore, in the 50s, being able to dub and lip sync your own performance became a very specific skill that not all actors could do. There were several domestic actors and stars, particularly comics, who were excellent at doubling their own voices. Among some of the most respected in this field were Parviz Sayyad, Behruz Vusuri, and Parviz Sayyad.
Yeah.
So like he was considered one of the best dubbers. Like you notice all these films, they've dubbed the voices, right?
Yeah, every single line. And as a
Yeah.
kid, that actually took me out of it. I remember watching the Samad movies and being like, I don't understand why. Like, what language was this in originally? Why is everything dubbed?
He was one of the best in the field. They like a lot of people saying like because it took a skill, right?
His are
like,
good. His are very
Yeah.
good. The other people's
it sounded
especially.
like trash. That's the problem. It all sounds like trash. When you watch all those films, they're so poorly dubbed. Not because the actors are bad at it. It's just I think maybe the
Access to technology. Yeah.
that's just it's just
Yeah.
it's really bad. It's comedically bad.
Yeah.
That's all I have for behind the scenes and trivia.
I'll also add he was very good friends with Mehjoui and with Farrokh Ghaffari, who we also talked about, who made Night of the Hunchback. And he started the Iranian New Wave movement and he started the original Qanun. Like these guys were all friends. Especially him and Farrokh Ghaffari were tight. And the dramatic films that Parviz made are considered some of the best movies in Iranian cinema. He also made in 1987 a movie about the Cinema Rex trial, which we should also potentially look at reviewing. But he's like, if you listen to his interviews, this man is a wealth of knowledge when he speaks.
So let me tell you some of the things I've known about. I've heard about the dude just growing up and stuff. I heard the dude, number one, doesn't like when people reference Samat to him. I heard he does not like it. If people ask him, can you do Samat, shit like that, I heard that dude takes it as disrespect. I heard Al Pacino is the same. When people ask Al Pacino to do Scarface, he doesn't like it.
Or like Michael Richards probably hates people asking him to do something Kramer-ish, right? Like he's like probably tired of people being like, hey, you're Kramer, do something Kramer.
I can tell you when people that I've met, like people who like my work have met and have ever asked me to do thing, I never respond positively.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it either.
Yeah.
I feel like it's disrespectful. I mean, it's like you're not treating this person like a human being. You're treating them like a and I also heard that dude in real life is opposite of the type of characters he plays, where he's just like a quiet, serious intellectual, and kind of a genius of Iranian cinema and comedy. So it's like he was incredible in Daejeon Naplan. To your listeners, like if you all haven't seen My Uncle Napoleon, to me, it's one of the greatest TV shows in the history of TV. Not Iranian TV, not American TV. It's one of the greatest shows. The writing, the acting, when this show ends, you literally want to cry because you feel like you're saying goodbye to your own family. Like, this is how much there are. It's just absolutely fucking incredible. Like, so I hope your readers can get their hands on either through YouTube to somehow stream it,
or the book. The book's very
It's on
good.
YouTube.
Oh yeah. The book is great. But if you don't want to read the book, just please
Watch the show.
And if you can't read, I read the book in English and it was beautifully translated, like impeccably translated.
He lives in LA too, doesn't he?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Or
like,
in
he's
California somewhere.
He's sort of a contemporary of yours in the fact, I mean, not contemporary, because that would be like you're doing the same thing at the same time. But you guys are neighbors, essentially. Both Iranians doing comedy, doing
Man,
satire.
I'd love to meet him. I think
You got to do a collab.
I'd love to meet him. That'd be lovely. I've never met him. I've never seen him around. Never seen him.
Yeah, he's not in any of this stuff, right? Yeah.
No. I mean, how old is this
interesting.
dude now?
He's in his 80s.
Yeah.
Got you. Yeah.
Like, he's older. But yeah, he's wealth of knowledge. You listen to him speak. He does interviews once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's just like every word out of his mouth, you're just wanting to hear more.
Yeah.
It's so gripping when he speaks.
Yeah.
So it's funny when you compare that to his role in this, because it's just
Completely
totally
opposite.
different,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much more BTS I have to add other than the fact that, yeah, like you said, Samad is a spin-off of the TV show, and the TV show was about the police chief. And Samad was like a secondary character in that show.
Okay.
But because of the popularity of Samad's character, they made the movies. And this one that we watched, this was the first movie.
So this was the first time he was the focus, like the main character of a thing?
Yeah, because even the TV show,
Interesting.
even the Samad TV show started after there had been like 3 or 4 Samad movies. And then the TV show ended, and then they continued the movies. So
I did not know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought this was like this. The idea was for these series of films. That's so cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, so started as a series about the police chief, and then it started with movies, this being the first one. And then they did a Samad TV show, and then they did Samad movies, and then they did Samad live shows once he was exiled from Iran.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense why this one was the way it was. Because they were really, at this point, kind of almost experimenting. Like, hey, what is this character?
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
That's interesting. But, man, yeah, that's... but already, especially towards the end, you could see, like, some of the classic tropes of Samad movies was developing. Like that, where they would just be normal and then go and immediately fight and then go back to normal, fight again, go back. That, to me, that shit is so fucking funny. God.
Yeah. And the Samad live shows would often switch between the jokey side that you were just talking about, but then immediately hit you with very deep and somber themes, especially because it was dealing with being exiled, right? And talking about the revolution. And I think that that's why it resonated so well with audiences, is because there were these people who were coming to watch it that were deeply traumatized over what happened to them, the things that they saw in Iran, how they've had to leave. Half their family is still in Iran. They can't go back home.
Same shit with my parents.
Yeah. But at the same time, Iranians are still very lively, jovial people, right? So you get that dichotomy between those two sides in the later Samad works, like the live shows.
Yeah, we're the happiest, saddest people in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the saddest, happiest people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Either
take your
way.
pick.
Or, you know what? We embrace all feelings.
Yeah.
You know, we're such emotional people. It's in everything we do. It's in every aspect of our civilization, from the way we, the way we love, the way we hate, the way we fight, the way we eat, the foods we eat, the way we look at the world. It's with so much emotion and passion, and that's why sometimes we get ourselves into trouble, and sometimes we have issues with each other, because it's emotion versus sometimes rationale. But
Yeah.
This is more of an observation than and that's more of a, for me, observation than a criticism. I'm not in a place to really criticize our entire culture in that way.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because that's an excellent transition into deeper analysis for this film.
Love it.
But we won't skip critical reactions, but I will just say that we don't have it. I couldn't find any critical reviews, because obviously they're lost to time and they're mostly like TV reviews. But obviously the fact that this thing resonated with the people, the fact that it can make 7 movies and then go into exile, this was a huge accomplishment for him. And I'm sure the critics at the time probably really loved it, to the point that they were able to celebrate it. Without government.
One thing I know, and I think we all three of us know, is Iranians, they're not going to sit on their opinions. They're going to let you know their opinions. So if this wasn't liked at the time, people would have bombarded his ass with so many negative opinions. They were like, hey, people don't like this. So it must have done, at the very least, well enough to say, hey, we want to see another one. And then we know that it became like legendary. He became legendary through the films rather than the initial TV show. That like you said, that he was just a supporting cast in. So I think that's kind of how we know, like, we can guess just from that, and then stuff my parents have told me from when I was growing up, like that must have been critically well received.
The thing I was trying to find, which I couldn't find any information on, is how maybe like the monarchy had responded. Like, was there any reaction from the Shah about this thing? Did he enjoy it? Was he critical of it? Was he making any comment, or did he just ignore it? I'd be really interested to know, but probably hard to find.
I don't know. But I wonder if that man was critical of anything, that it would be allowed to be continued. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. I'm not saying he was like. I don't know. What do you think? How do you think he would?
Well, you're right. If he didn't like it, he was the Shah. Like he would make sure it didn't exist.
I mean, they're smart enough that they never said anything politically about like a monarchy or anything like that. But inherently, like you were saying earlier, Farhan, it sort of talks about the dichotomy of like the lower class and the poor class, the working class, the ruling class. And I wonder if someone like the Shah would have looked at that and be like, hey, I don't know if this is good for people to see the.
He might have actually been down, because the movie, like, down in the sense of like, he might have actually liked the Samad movies, because it kind of proved the point that the monarchy was trying to make with the White Revolution. Do you know what I mean? Where they were trying to get people to come from the village and come into the city and become more educated. So I would say, like, if there is a big criticism to make of the movie, it's probably that it's constantly showing. You could make the argument that this movie is always making jokes and laughing at the expense of the villagers, right? That they're like uneducated, villagers are stupid, all this stuff. But when you watch the actual movie, the villagers are the ones who win.
Every time.
They run out these like super rich, educated whatevers who come to the village. Right. So, but just to answer something that you mentioned in terms of the Shah and whether or not he would have cracked down or not, we've gone over a few films that the Shah didn't necessarily prevent the movies from coming out, but after one screening of the film, Savak went in and like took the director, brought them into a room and was like, hey, you have to change this about the movie.
Really?
And then the filmmakers had to then go back and like change a bunch of stuff, redub scenes, reshoot scenes, like
The Deer.
The Deer is a very famous example of that.
Yeah, that's not.
Where it played once uncensored at the Tehran International Film Festival, and immediately after the screening was over,
Daryush.
Kimiyai, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, Maestro did Gov. Kimiyai was apprehended, and they made him make all these changes. And actually, you brought up Daryush as well. Maestro, he had to change a bunch of stuff with The Deer. Like, The Deer was able to be made, but they had to change a bunch of stuff and be like, oh, yes, it's in a village in rural Iran, but it's actually set before the reign of the Pahlavis. And they also made them like power wash all the walls in the village to make it seem less dirty, because they didn't want it to look like Iran under the Shah was dirty. So there was definitely still some censorship, but obviously not to the same degree as what's going on now.
Deeper analysis, which we're sort of touching on right now, but I like what some of you guys were saying about social division and class struggle. That's my main takeaways. Like, he's clearly doing a satirical take down on some of this class hierarchy that he clearly thought was BS.
Yeah. And for someone that was clearly very educated person, he's like on the side of the working man, on the side of the working person. It feels like he's on the side of like he's about punching up, not punching down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just the thing of like, you mentioned earlier, him constantly making sure if someone called his name Samad, he would respond with Agha.
Yeah.
And what was the rival you said? Farhan, you said the rival, his like arch nemesis, would do that with his last name.
Bakarzadeh. That should be a rule. That should be a rule on the podcast that anytime anyone says Ainullah, someone else has to interject
Bakarzadeh. Deal.
I just like there's something you could probably extrapolate about how it's like everyone's like need for a sense of identity. Like it gives them purpose. It gives for Samad, it gives him a sense of like authority that he's deeply respect that he's deeply sort of
you're not
seeking
better
that he's
than,
not getting from anything
because you're from the city and whatever. You're not better than me.
Yeah. That's kind of deeper analysis that I took from it. I didn't think it was too like it wasn't as deep as some of those more poetic things. It's kind of as a comedy should be. It's like your statement is there for people to perceive, and the things you're poking fun of should be noted.
It doesn't hit you over the head with it.
Yeah. Even just the way that like women are treated, I think, in this film is definitely commentary on the times in Iran and the way that women were treated. Like, there's all these photos that you see online where people are like, Iran in the 70s, and it's like women in bikinis, and then it's like Iran today, and it's like women in like full chador and stuff. But even then, like in the 70s, if a woman was like sunbathing beside a river in this rural village in Iran, everyone is losing their minds. All the men are like, "Oh my god!"
They're in
and
the
then
trees.
all the women
They're
are
literally
like,
in the trees, like fucking birds staring. Yeah, I mean, bro, things are so bad in Iran that we look at the 70s and like that and 60s like as if it's like heaven on earth. There was like still a lot of fucking issues, definitely for women. My mom told me a lot of stories about some nasty old dudes on the bus would like pinch their butts and like when they were like in high school.
There's an internet meme that's supposed to be satirizing that thing, Farhan, you're saying about how Iran in the 60s, and it looks like something like very liberal. The internet meme is making fun of that, being like, this was Iran or Afghanistan in the 60s. And it's like a picture of like Jenna Jameson going down on a girl. It's like some graphic extra, like saying like, they're taking the extreme of like, Iran was so liberal. Here's like two women, like it's like a very graphic image of like a porn scene happening. And it's like Iran now. It's just making fun of all those memes that say that Iran was this like super liberal heaven when really it wasn't.
And in some areas it was definitely much more liberal. In other areas it was like 200 years removed. And that was kind of the point of the White Revolution.
Right. And in all fairness, things have never been easy for Iranian women.
Yeah.
Things have been easier, but Iranian women have always had to deal with a lot of shit.
Yeah.
It goes to even show just watching this movie. I think of this when I see a lot of like other Iranian movies like in the 50s and 60s. Just seeing that woman who was quite attractive, like the main gangster's girlfriend. She like never obviously is wearing hijab because nobody was wearing hijab at the time unless you're extremely religious or quite religious. And she like sunbathes and gets down into her bathing suit, which is like looks like skimpy lingerie at that point. And the whole point is she's using her seduction to kind of steal the rug from Samad. And it's like, you get surprised. For me personally, I get like shocked seeing that in Iranian cinema because everything post 1979 is so conservative that to see a woman disrobe and have this revealing two-piece bathing suit,
it is wild. Yeah,
is like it's just like it takes you out of it for a second because you're like, wow, like, you don't see this in Iranian movies anymore. You can't. You literally can't. Not if it was made there.
Yeah.
So just for the listeners who are jumping in at this episode, and if you've missed our summaries of this in past episodes. There was this movement called the White Revolution that happened in the 60s in Iran, where there was a lot of social reform and encouragement and moves made to try to move people from rural areas of Iran into the cities Now, there's criticisms of the way it was done, and there's good things about the way it was done. There's bad things. So look it up yourself, read about it yourself, and get your own kind of view on it. But the idea was that you had tons of people moving from rural Iran into the metropolitan areas. And I think that this film is kind of touching on that time period in Iran, especially when you have Aynullah.
What is it?
Bakarzadeh.
Bakarzadeh.
Yeah. When you have him returning from the city into the town, and some of the other movies that we talked about that were set in rural areas of Iran, you see that too, where someone comes from the town and the villagers praise them. In later movies, when city people come, the villagers actually berate them for it, for thinking that they're better than them. But at this time, it was still seen as this like big deal. It's so great. Wow, this person's coming from the city. What a big deal. And to show at this time, because this was still like in the midst of the White Revolution, to see at this time that you have these city people coming into the town and it's these villagers that are the ones that run them out, that they show how like dumb they are in some ways and they push back against them. It feels a lot like Ocean's 11 versus Charlie Chaplin in the middle of, I don't know.
Versus Ernest.
Versus Ernest. Yeah, it's like Ocean's 11 versus Ernest, right?
Ernest foils a heist would be the name of the movie. Instead of Ernest Scared Stupid or Ernest goes to jail,
Foils a heist,
Ernest
yeah.
foils a heist.
Because even in the movie, like when these townspeople come in, right? Yeah. One of them is here saying that that they're developers, right? And they're looking to create a road. Like this village doesn't even have a road or a highway or access to the main cities, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also the one guy pretending to be an epidemiologist who his whole plan is to check the eyes of people and be like, oh yeah, they're getting this weird parasite from the fibers of rugs. And the actual doctor who's in the village is like, that's not a thing. And then he's like, no, it is. It's a new disease. It's we know all about it in the city. So they use this dichotomy of the city folk and the villagers as part of the actual plot, which I think was done excellently.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, without looking at Wikipedia at all, I would say, to sum it up, the White Revolution, or as we all know, the Shah and People's Revolution, was really a far-reaching series of reforms resulting in aggressive modernization
in the imperial state of Iran, launched on 26th of January.
All right.
1963.
But yeah, that's very well said. That's good for deeper analysis. Do you think Parviz, though, was he living in Tehran at this point in his life? Was he kind of looking at it from a city person with empathy, or was he a villager?
I don't know, but he was born in Lahijan in Gilan, which is a city. But the fact that he grew up in Gilan, I would imagine that he likely spent time in other small towns and villages around Lahijan.
Well, the way he talks, and the way his parents talk and stuff, his mom talks and stuff, like what dialect, what accent is that? Of what region?
I don't know.
No?
I think it's like, I feel like it's like a Dahati or like villager accent from around that area.
But like stretched out to the most like satirical version of it too, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the way everybody talks in it is so weird.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you, what's that thing that you said you say Payam in your family? It was like he has this recurring thing where he always repeats himself. So like the one that really caught my attention was when he's like asleep and he's like, yeah,
he's always singing what he's doing. So if he's doing math, he's like, I'm doing math. Yeah. He's sleeping. He's like, I'm sleeping.
And then everything is like, nobody can do this like me. It's like literally at one point he literally goes, nobody can walk to the city like me, or like nobody can walk into town like me. Like, It's like, what?
Yeah. That's actually a very funny line.
Or calling people Fuzul Bashi, like that's like a big thing. People are constantly quoting this. There's Aynullah.
Bakarzadeh. Why can't I get that right?
he's always saying petocha to people, and like that 100% has become a thing. Yeah.
What's it to you?
And there's even a part in the movie when he's like enamored by the woman in the bikini, and he's looking, and usually when he says like, what's it to you? He's like, petocha! Like he like yells it out. But this one time he's like so hypnotized by this woman in the bikini that Samad's like, hey, what are you looking at? And he's like, petocha. Petocha.
Funny. That's funny.
All these like tiny little things. It's just, they're so funny, and they just add up, and they become part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Right.
And it gets its start here.
Yeah.
And like you said, Payam, too, the voices, it's like this weird mix of the like stereotypical villager voice.
Yeah.
But also infused with this like old timey movie voice that they had in Iran.
Yeah. I noticed that the women characters in these movies all talk the same. They all sound the same. It's just like, it's everything just like sounds like that.
You're right.
It's so, yeah.
Give us the English equivalent of that. What would it sound like in English?
Please, darling, don't tell me. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
It's not how women talk in real life. It's like like you said, it's like an Iranian female movie voice.
Yeah.
Right.
And the male equivalent is similar to, especially a lot of movies that you see in the coming out of American cinema in the 30s and 40s, that like mid-Atlantic voice.
Now look here, baby.
It's like a fake accent.
Yeah, it's a broadcaster's voice though too.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like the most pronunciation you could put into something. Because then you go talk like this, see? And then when you're speaking on the radio, you can make very clear what you're trying to say, yeah?
Yeah, definitely a little bit of that.
In Iranian cinema in general, the Jahel cadence is very popular.
Yeah.
And even some of these characters had that Jahel cadence, like, baby, nah, chigar mikari, like that cadence, like, and what would the equivalent to that be? Like, I don't know what the equivalent to that is, but it's...
Listen here, see? I'm going to go...
Yeah, it's almost that, or it's almost like the way mafia people talk in American movies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like you want to do a tough guy voice.
Let me tell you this. We're gonna break your fucking legs if you don't eat. So it's like that. The equivalent is like, I'm gonna break your fucking legs.
Yeah, and then in later Samad movies too, there's a guy who's always high.
Yeah,
and his high voice is again, it's like pushed to an extreme. It's similar to the high voices in The Deer, where it's like not a realistic. It's like it's definitely that, like the English equivalent would be someone be like, like what's going on, man? It's like it would be like that, the Iranian equivalent of that, but it's like, oh, Sama Chetori, like something like that.
That's hilarious.
One last thought on deeper analysis that I wanted to get your thoughts on, and then we'll move on to best scene. But do you guys think there's a chance the carpet was a magic rug? Because yes, there's the dream sequence at the end that he's having, but there's constantly reference by one of the gangsters that is like, maybe the rug just got up and flew away on its own. Maybe it's a magic. And they keep bringing it up. And I just want to say from a literary perspective, do you guys believe that could have possibly been infused in the magic of the world? Because they bring it up so many times that it could have been a magic rug. And then it ends that way, which they reveal as a dream.
I think if it didn't end in a dream, I think you could make the argument. But the fact that Samad wakes up and he's like, oh, I had a dream.
Yeah.
To me is like, oh no, it's not.
And in one of I think the YouTube one doesn't end with him waking up too, of those two videos that we sent the links of.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, it just cuts with them.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so if that was the TV broadcast version, it didn't end with that. Okay, just wanted to ask your opinion. Best scene. Pam, do you have a favorite scene?
Bro, I think, again, this particular Samad didn't hit the kind of... It didn't have the kind of moves, so to speak, that I liked. There was really not a lot of set pieces and that I guess there's the part when they're like, when everybody gets together in the police chief's like office, and then Ainulah's there, and like Ainullah, him and Samad they keep fighting, and then the chief stops them. It's like, and then finally the assistant has to break them up, and then they start fighting again. I think that was my favorite scene. That was the most Samad like scene for me.
Yeah,
personally. Yeah. Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. No,
I think
that's
so,
a good
yeah.
scene.
So that was the scene that I laughed.
I had two scenes. The scene when Samad's explaining to the cop that the woman was getting naked, and I mean, this doesn't translate on podcast, but the cop's like, "Look, shud, Yanin."
Yeah.
Like kind of like just moves his body like he's like removing his clothes, and so like the whole thing
He's
is
like, she got naked?
Yeah, and he has to explain, but then he has to explain to the cop that she got naked while Leila's there, and Leila doesn't like hearing this, so he's trying to find a way to like balance the two. I thought that was a really funny scene.
Yeah, because he wants to brag that she got naked in front of him to the cop because he's the machismo, right?
Yeah.
But then in front of Leila, he wants to like downplay it.
Yeah.
So
that
funny.
was great, and I also really like the Micharone. What was the thing that mixed? There was a mix-up in the. He kept. What was the word that the guy said?
Chahesh mikonam. He's like, I'm begging of you, and Samad mishears it as I'm itchy.
Yeah, and this like Chahesh time, and he's like Chahesh time. Let me come and scratch you, and he's like, he goes, we'll all scratch him. Let's all scratch him together. And then the gangsters start scratching their like their leader, and then like the main guy is watching from the binoculars, like, what the hell are they doing over there? And his girlfriend thinks, he goes, it looks like they're all itching him and they're all scratching him.
اینا دارن با مهندس چیکار میکنن؟ ریختن سرش؟
انگار میخاروننش.
میخاروننش؟ برای چی؟
That was like my probably number one scene too.
That was my number one scene too. I remember seeing that as a kid and just thinking it was hilarious. And for the longest time, if I heard anyone say like "Chahesh mikonam" or "Chahesh daram" or whatever, I would always be like "Chahesh dari." Like every time, like ever since I was like 5 or 6, I would immediately jump in with that joke of like "Chahesh dari," and then I would like jump into scratching them or itching them or tickling them. It's that's.
Now, I'm pretty sure that version wasn't on the YouTube clip version.
It was cut down.
It was cut down significantly.
It was cut down. I saw the like VHS version of it, and it's so funny. But yeah, like Payam said, it was definitely hard for me to find a favorite scene in this. In the later movies, there's absolutely favorite scenes.
Yeah.
In this one, there's a lot of favorite moments and a lot of like back and forth. A lot of the dialogue, I think, is like snappy and super funny, and especially in moments like when Samad is like pleading to be let go. They've like arrested him for like the 4th time, and he's like, "Please let me go home. My mom's home alone, whatever." And then the police chief's like, "Wait, I got this." He's like, "Will you still poke people's eyes out?" And he goes, "I will not." He goes, "Will you still go to Katkhoda's house, the mayor?" He's like, "I will." He's like, "Okay, so stay put till you wither away." "Okay, fine, I will not." He's like, "All right, let him go." Yeah. Or the scene where they're showing Katkhoda, the mayor. He's like showing him photos of the rug. He's like, "Is it this one?" He's like, "No, the weaving is too small on that one." "What about this one?" "No, that's also too small. It's a picture." "Yeah, it's not even worth framing. It's too small." And he's like, "No, it's a photo of the rug. Photos can be big. Photos can be small. Must this photo be the size of your rug for you to recognize it?" And he goes, "Yes." Like it's very literal, a lot of the jokes.
Yeah.
And I just love how much back and forth there is. And we talked about how he still has a lot of heart and he's still very, very sincere. Like there's a scene where when he's talking about Kaveh, you were just talking about this, the scene where he's talking about the woman who was getting naked. And or not naked, but like getting into her bikini and sunbathing. They're like, "Well, what were you doing by the river?" And he's like, "So I was sitting there doing my math homework." And he's like, "No, wait. A liar is an enemy of God. I was sitting there stitching my shoes, and then she got naked." And he's like, "No, a liar is an enemy of God. I was sitting there doing nothing." And then he continues with the story. So I love that even to himself, he's like correcting himself because he's like, "Oh, I mustn't lie." So he's like trying to constantly fix it.
That simplicity he has like that.
Least favorite scene. You guys have a least favorite scene? I didn't like the singing scenes for some reason. I actually kind of thought the songs were a little bit annoying. And there was that scene where like there's some sort of meeting happening in that spot where the jazz singer's singing, and he's like, "I told you to sing a song." You remember that whole? I was confused at that scene.
He comes in and he's like, "I sang all these songs for them, and then they all ran away. They left home because his job was he was supposed to go to the tea house and sing and get because he has a good voice and get all the men in the town to come and pour in there so that he could keep them distracted while they go steal the rugs." But while he's doing this, he starts singing sad songs, and it makes everybody cry. And because all these men are crying, they go home because they don't want to be in public crying. So he's like, they all went home. He's like, what do you mean they went home? Did you sing them songs? He's like, yeah, I sang them songs. I sang them sad songs. He's like, no, you idiot. You can't sing these simpleton sad songs because you're going to cry and go home. You need to sing them happy songs so that they want to stay and dance. And that's why in the later scene, when they're doing the music, it's happy music.
Yeah. That was my least favorite scene.
The argument or the singing sad songs?
The singing.
I can't think of a least favorite scene, to be honest. I guess to me, any of the scenes where it was just the thugs and the gangsters together was not as funny or interesting. You know, I guess. Like when Samad's not there. I don't know. Yeah, I can't think of a particular scene. I was like, I can't stand this scene. There was either scenes that I just didn't like in general, that bored me in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
On a similar note, there's a bunch of scenes early on where they're going around recruiting the gangsters for their crew. I think you could have cut out a bunch of those scenes. There's like 4 scenes where they're like, go to a boxing gym. And they're like, hey, do you want to come make money being somebody's, what's it called? The guard?
Bodyguard?
Bodyguard. Do you want to come make money being somebody's bodyguard? Like there's just a bunch of those that you could cut out. You don't need them.
Yeah. Also, that opening credit sequence, when it keeps pausing
During the fight scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, what the f*** is the point of this? This is just dragging out the credit sequence.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very, I think that was my least favorite. I was like, what the f*** are they doing? Why are they pausing the music? Don't pause the music. Pause the video. And so it's like, it's cool. It's like, action, pause, music is... But when it's like silent, if I was in the audience in the cinema, I was like, what the f*** am I watching?
It's like someone's stopping. It's literally someone's hitting pause on the movie. For
a second I thought,
Multiple times.
Is this a mistake? Or is this like some error on when they sort of uploaded this? Or
Especially because the blocking in the fight scene is actually kind of funny.
Right.
Where it's just Samad is chasing after this guy trying to poke his eye out because he said Leila's name.
Right.
And he's like poking at him and he dodges and whatever. But every time it pauses, you lose that momentum.
Definitely. It makes no fucking sense. I don't know what they were thinking. I really don't know what they were thinking with that.
Damn, that's poetry. I guess when you can fill up your favorite lines of dialogue from the movie. We've already talked about mine, so I'll just say it. It was the Chayesh Danam, and he's like, Chayesh? That was my favorite scene. I just really laughed. I didn't laugh out loud, but I chuckled. I did that thing where I breathe air through my nose while watching something alone. I went with laughter. That's my favorite line.
My favorite line is when Samad gets in a little argument with Leila's dad, the mayor of this little village. And as he's walking away, he goes, it's as if this guy bought his house. Which in Persian is because it's true. That guy probably didn't buy his house. His like great grandfather probably built this little shack in the middle of a village, and it was first come first serve back then in rural Iran. So like him and a bunch of his buddies built a bunch of shacks, and he was just born into the right family. So I love that it's like commentary on like nepo babies and generational wealth.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's very cool. Mine is much less deep than that. I just love that part. He's walking down the street, and then you hear him sort of in the background, like, just sort of singing to himself, like, well, nobody walks to town like me.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Oh, that's good.
So fucking stupid.
Let's do favorite performance. I'll go last because I feel like mine's gonna shock you guys. Payam, you go first. Favorite performance?
I mean, obviously, like, Samad was great in this, but it's I'm so used to the Samad of later, that, like, where really the series picks up steam. So it's hard for me to, even though he was great, he gets so great later that, you know who I think just was a funny, interesting character was the Leila's dad. What's his name again?
Kat Khoda
was his title, yeah.
Kat Khoda was just
the
like
mayor.
funny and just like a good actor and just like, I don't know. I liked him. I thought it was a good performance on it.
Oh wow, that's solid. Mine is a two-way tie between Parviz Sayyad, who plays Samad, and the guy who plays Einollah.
Bagharzadeh.
There you go. Nail it.
Mine was an actor by the name of Manucher Farid, who I recognized also from Bahram Bezai's film Downpour, and I really liked him in that. And he is the leader of the gang. He's the main guy who's out to get the rugs. The guy who's with the girlfriend who's ordering everybody around. The architect guy. I think he's actually a very good actor in general. Like if you see him in other films, he's got quite range, and I liked his presence in the film. I kind of like.
He was solid.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So shout out Manucher Farid.
Shout out, Manucher.
Nitpicks, hot takes, and what aged poorly. What hasn't lasted the test of time for you guys? Or what are some nitpicks or hot takes that you have about the film? Yeah, go ahead. You go.
That opening credit sequence, I think, is lunacy.
Yeah.
I think whoever's idea was that, like, I don't know if they were. It blows my mind that somebody thought that was a good idea to do what they did with that credit sequence. Absolutely imbecilic.
I want your thoughts on this, Payam, but this movie's too long. And for comedy,
it's too long.
Your runtime.
Yeah,
Okay, so the versions we saw, it was like one version was an hour 41, another was an hour 47. The IMDb listed runtime is an hour 57. Dude, that is way too much stuff going on for a comedy. For comedy, you want to be in and out. You want to be you need to edit that shit down. Right, Payam, you know this, man. You make comedy like every day, pretty much. Like you need to be like, how long your thing is gonna directly depend on how funny your thing is.
That setup
an
is too
hour
long.
and 50. The setup's too long. The story beats are too long. And like a film like this, I bet you. Imagine the runtime was an hour and 10 minutes. How good this movie could be.
So much funnier. Yeah,
you
so
cut
much
out
funnier.
like literally. I'm talking like 47 minutes of material could be cut out, and the movie's just like tight, funny, joke after joke, beat after beat. And I don't know if that was them getting excited that this is their first time making a film. So they're like, oh, we get to go like long, expansive, probably something like that. But man, for like, it has not aged. It has not stood the test of time in terms of like condensed comedy beats and condensed storytelling. That's my big
tickler.
There's
too much air. There's too much air in it. And again, to me, hour and a half tops for a silly comedy like this. Hour and 40 minutes tops for a silly, and that's including the ending credit sequence. And so it's kind of, it's just like, again, like you don't need a 35-minute setup for this comedy, you know, like let's get in funny right away. Yeah. And then again, that opening credit sequence was just like, I remember watching it going, if this is not a mistake, these guys are f***ed up with this.
The opening of this movie literally should have just been like, a group of gangsters sitting around a table. They all get a photo of the rug, and he's like, all right, guys, here's the deal. We're going to get in there. We're going to steal this rug from this village. And they're like, but where's the rug? It could be anywhere. And then it cuts to Samad on the side of the river. And then you get right into the movie. And then you don't need to like ever see the gangsters again until they show up at the village. And you can considerably cut down like 90% of what happens. Not 90%, but like 20% of what happens at the village. You cut that out too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Another like technical thing for me that is like something that didn't age well is obviously how everyone's dialogue is dubbed. So like obviously like lip flap and stuff. And then also the depiction of women obviously is like, I feel like that's our like default answer for a lot of the older films, especially.
Absolutely. Movies in the 60s, 70s in Iran, especially movies like this, they really depict women as like a fucking just
objects,
someone on a man's arm, you know, like, and then she just kind of like whines about something in a corner. There's no character development. Yeah, it feels very, very backwards and certainly not conducive to like how our culture really is, you know?
Yeah. I will say though that to the credit of this film does also critique on that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like when Samad looks, like the woman is sunbathing and Samad looks over and there's like an entire tree just packed with like 40 men, like all sitting in a branch watching her. And he's like, get out of here, you perverts. And he throws a rock at them and then they fall out.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of that too, but just because you make that joke, I don't think that necessarily excuses it either.
Sure.
Double feature lineup. If you were in charge of screening a theater showing of two films back to back, and one of them is this film, what would be the film you would pair this up as a tonal or thematic corollary that you think audiences would enjoy watching back to back?
A short film. No, it's not. It's not that long. It's just too long for what it is. But no.
Yes.
Man, I can't.
I'll give you my answer, and maybe it'll help you think, brainstorm some stuff. I thought either the go-to is pair this up with Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, because it's also like look at the way the Americans did the same sort of. They always called him the little tramp, right? He was Charlie Chaplin's whole thing. Even though he doesn't speak, his thing is like he's the mischievous little trickster that gets in everybody's way and bothers everyone. But and that again, two like black and white movies, so you kind of get the tonal feeling. But also, you could just honestly, you could do it because Ernest from the Ernest Scared Stupid or Ernest Goes to School or Ernest Goes to Jail, he's a little bit more accurate in the sense that he's the country bumpkin who does speak a lot, and his speaking is what gets him in trouble. So you could do this with an Ernest movie or a Charlie Chaplin movie, and I think you'd get like, here's Iran's version of a Charlie Chaplin type figure, and then watch Charlie Chaplin afterwards.
That's really good.
I would probably put this with some Marx Brothers movie.
Nice. Duck Soup.
Some of the physicality and some of the scenes of people getting into conflict in Marx Brothers films reminds me of some of the ways they do it in Samet films. Like how sometimes these physical conflicts become such utter chaos. I think that would be maybe a decent supplement to a film like this.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's good. I would actually pair it with a Zucker film. So like Airplane or Naked Gun, something like that. Because there's a lot of play on words in the dialogue in this where someone will say something and then it's misunderstood. And it's like snappy dialogue around a lot of play on words, which is really funny. And Airplane, Naked Gun, those types of movies have that same type of thing. So even though it's not tonally the same, I think I would probably pair it with one of those.
Have you ever heard that very famous? It's the best play on words I've ever heard in a comedy. It's Leslie Nielsen when he did Files from the Police Squad. Before he was in Naked Gun, Police Squad was the show that Naked Gun was the movie. And it's like he walks into some room and some woman's there's like, "Who are you? How'd you get in here?" And he goes, "I'm a locksmith, and I'm a locksmith." It's like the best play on words I've ever heard. Who are you? How'd you get in here? I'm a locksmith, and I'm a locksmith.
That's also Zucker.
Yeah.
That's why I'm mentioning it.
Oh, sorry, I don't know.
What were you gonna say, Bio? You're gonna say Leslie Nielsen quote or something?
Yeah, I thought you were about to say the one from Airplane when it was like, "Surely you don't mean," is like, "Yes, I do, and don't call me Shirley." And I was like, it's popular of that. But Zucker.
Or we have to get these people to a hospital. A hospital? What is it? It's a big white building with patients, but that's not important right now.
Yeah.
There's like tons of that in this movie. I listed so many of them. It's so funny.
Interesting. Yeah.
Can this be a modern Hollywood remake? I'd put Payam in the lead, man. If I had $10 million, Farhan, you don't think you'd be excited if you hear like a comedian?
Oh, 100%.
Comedic actor like Payam, you put him on, like reboot the franchise, new actor, and it's like give a fresh take on it.
That'd be awesome.
Get Peter Farley to produce it. We already had dinner with him.
Yeah, we already had dinner with him. We already had dinner with him in the same building. I don't know how that would work for American culture. That's the thing, or Western culture. I would first of all love to do it, even if it's a complete failure. I'd love to do it. I think it'd be really awesome. I imagine. I don't know. Yeah, I'm so curious to how this story would be received in 2024.
Look, success is no indicator on whether or not something should be a Hollywood remake because they've made enough. I mean, they just made Madam Web, which is like clearly a sign of this might have been made by an AI.
I mean, it's going down as one of the worst movies in like modern.
Yeah, of all time. So success doesn't have to be the indicator as to whether or not it could be made. We just think more like some movies, like we've looked at like Kiarostami stuff that's like almost like documentary like and blending the world. And it's like, this would never be able to be translated in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because it's so specific to that person or that country or that issue. The example I've given in the past is like, could you see Wes Anderson do a take of this film? Or could you see like M. Night Shyamalan? You know, it's like, would you be interested in seeing an American Hollywood remake of it?
Right.
What about you, Farhan?
I think you could. I would cast Payam in it, put it in like rural America, and make him like. I think it would also be interesting if he was an immigrant from Iran,
Right.
who's been living in this little village in the States, because then you can still get some of the cultural idiosyncrasies.
Payam is Samad.
Bring Parviz Sayyad on as an executive producer.
Put Agha Navid Agha as the rival. His rival,
Yeah.
like his villain.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
There's another character that he would be perfect for that'll come up in a later film.
Okay, great.
It's Samad's best friend.
Oh, he would. Yeah, that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious. But it was like they had a weird love and hate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Saman just is so anybody that even could potentially talk to or even look in Leila's direction, he's
Yeah,
gonna always.
yeah.
I mean, he's just it's crazy.
Here's the last thought on this, on the Hollywood remake thing. Maybe wouldn't you be interested in seeing a biopic on Parviz Sayyad? Like, that'd be kind of interesting too. Again,
That'd be
whether or not
really
it'd be
cool.
successful, but like that, like, you know, they did a Chaplin biopic, which I thought with Robert Downey Jr., which I think is so excellent. I really like it. So, you know, a biopic on like the comedic guy who has to stand up against classism and class struggle and all that stuff and his life after that'd be kind of interesting.
I mean,
And he's like a
think it'd be-
cinephile.
Yeah, it'd be a great story. The selling point of it, unfortunately, is hard because Charlie Chaplin is known by every country in the world, and Parviz Sayyad is known by Iranians all over the world. You know, so it's like
You've been living in LA too long. You're thinking of the marketing. You're like, well, how are we going to sell this movie? I'm saying it like kid in a candy store. You have $50 million to make the movie. Would you do it?
no. Well, again, it's hard for me because who's going to watch it?
Us.
Anyone, whoever.
Who cares?
You're thinking about it making money. I'm saying, like, for example,
We
if
live
someone
in
gave
a
me
world
$50
where
million,
the business. If we live, let's say we live in a world where the business aspect of this completely doesn't exist. Yes, I would absolutely love to. It would be almost like a dream.
there we
It
go.
would be
That's-
so cool to be able to do this legendary thing that means so much to our culture. To be the one that remakes it, have it be successful, have your peers be like, "Yes, this is great too." Because I think the job of a remake is not to ever replace the original. It's to make you love both for what they are.
yeah.
It's just taking this idea that you already love and extrapolating it to something else in a different way in a different time. But my idea would be that like you watch this and there are two things that you can appreciate completely separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think, like, in the spirit of this thing, it's like there are certain movies that probably will never get made. If someone offered me $50 million to produce a film and they said, go remake Citizen Kane, I would say no, because Citizen Kane does not need to be remade. Back to the Future, I get moving up the timelines a bit, but that movie I genuinely, my heart of hearts, wouldn't want to do it. The Godfather, there's no point in anyone remaking The Godfather. There's no point. You're not going to be as good as the first one.
I could take The Godfather as a miniseries.
Oh my God, Father.
Only because I want them to redo what happens after the second one. Because the third one is not good.
No, the third one.
Yeah, he's done a re-edit of it. He's done a re-edit though.
Yeah,
of
I haven't seen
massive
it yet.
re-edit. Final thoughts and grades. I want to go last because actually, you know what? Fuck it. I give this film a C.
Wow. I give this a C. I give this a C. I think if you have never seen a Samad film, this shouldn't be the first one you see. This should be somewhere like the third or fourth or fifth one you see. You should see this after you've seen Samad, become a fan, and then you want to maybe see the origin of it, or you want to see how sort of like it's evolved from what it was towards the tail end of it and what it was in the beginning of it. But I wouldn't recommend this movie to anyone who hasn't seen Samad. I would recommend this movie to somebody like me who has seen a lot of Samad but had never seen this one and now has something to compare those later ones to. Of course, there are elements of this that are really funny and cool, and you later see what they took and heightened. Mm-hmm. I'm really glad I saw it. But I certainly wouldn't recommend it to anybody unless they're a veteran Samad watcher.
Yeah, I can see that for sure, and I guess that might also be why it resonated so well with people, is because they had already seen Samad in the TV show, so it was like they got to see it and be like, okay, that wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was still more of a character that I liked, and it got honed in the later movies.
Right.
I would give the film a B minus, so not too far off from you guys. It is still definitely. I think I'm being more forgiving, but I did really like seeing the nexus of a lot of the tropes in this film and seeing how, like, Enola's backstory, right? And seeing all these different little character idiosyncrasies getting developed in this one was interesting to me. But yeah, it was way too long. It could have absolutely been cut down to like hour 10, something like that, an hour probably even. And I think it would have benefited the film a lot more. The later Samad movies definitely get higher and higher as we go on. Like some of my favorite Samad movies, you might be surprised how high of a grade I'll give them. But yeah, overall, I'm glad I saw it. But like you said, Payam, I would recommend this to people who have seen other Samad films and want more. But this would not be even in the top 3 that I would recommend.
No, definitely not. Probably not top 5.
Yep. So I feel like, yeah, all around we're about the same. So your highest mark was what, Farn? What was your mark? You were the highest, right?
I gave it a B minus.
B minus, yeah.
So that means that our show average for Cinema Rex for Samad and the rug of His Holiness Soleiman is C+.
Okay.
It's quite a title, too. All right, I'll wrap it up. Yeah. Samad, a street-smart simpleton whose earnest and good-natured spirit was crafted to satirize and take down classism and the social division that plagued Iran at the time, with clever buffoonery and punch-up criticism, lives on. Parviz Sayyad's legacy was firmly cemented in the world of Iranian comedy, and the legendary actor, writer, director, and producer is to be thanked for giving this world a side of Iran we so rarely get to venture through. To Mr. Sayyad and his indomitable character, Samad, that lives on in our hearts, we salute and we thank you. Payam, thank you very much for joining us on Cinema Rex.
Thank you, Payam.
Thank you so much for having me, fellas. What a great show. What a great idea. And I'd love to be back.
You'll be back very soon. Sooner than you know. Tomorrow at 6 a.m.
Okay. All right. See you
then. Farhan, thank you very much. As always, you know how I feel about you.
Thank you, Kaveh.
To our audience, thank you for listening. And to everybody, be'omid didar.
Bye.
Bye.
Music for Cinema Rex was written and performed by Sohail Sadinejad.